Hello, hello, and welcome, Triumph family. I am Isabel David, and we're going to welcome Jason David here. Perfect. I'd like to welcome everybody to this new segment of Discovery Moments. And Discovery Moments is a place for the community, a place to grow, a place to be in a receptivity for questions that you may have regarding spirituality, regarding the community, regarding your walk with Father, regarding money or businesses. If you can think of it, we hope to answer it for you right here in Discovery Moments on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Each week is a new question. So we have Mr. Jason David here, who's going to be providing some nuances and illumination to tonight's question. And tonight's question stems from...
Where do they reach out? Where do they send their questions?
Oh, yes. Their questions can be sent to Facebook at Triumph Global Now on Facebook. You can simply hit the message button and it'll show up, and you'll go ahead and submit the message and I'll get it on my WhatsApp. So it's super easy, super simple. And if you have any questions, you definitely want to DM us there.
That's right.
Tonight's question stems from a place of prayer. And also, I think it was instigated by mentorship from yesterday's session. So in prayer, the question that came up was, what is gaslighting spiritually? And how can we acknowledge it in real time? And if you are the one that is particularly gaslighting maybe a friend or a family, how can you stop it? So it's a three-part question on the subject of gaslighting.
Yeah. I think the first thing this is a great question. I think the first thing that we get to address is the question of what is gaslighting spiritually. That's quite an interesting question. I think only Christians tend to do that. I think only Christians tend to always want to enigmatically create, move things into a spiritual realm. I think first you can do that, but the scripture says, Paul said something really important that comes up when you ask that question. He says, first the natural, then the spiritual. In other words, the reason why he says first the natural, then the spiritual, because we know that everything in the natural comes from the spiritual. So why would he kind of seem to be countermanding what he teaches as that the spiritual man, the carnal mind doesn't understand the spiritual man or spiritual things, for he's carnally minded. So
Right.
How can it be natural? Because natural doesn't mean carnal.
Right.
This is important. Natural doesn't mean carnal. So the carnal mind is enmity against God. It can't understand the things of God or enter into the dimensionality or the realm of God thought. So to the carnal mind, everything of the spiritual mind, everything that is spiritually astute, is asinine. It is nonsense. It's foolishness. But
Right.
when it comes to something like this, natural as opposed to spiritual, when he says first the natural, then the spiritual, what we're talking about is, let's say, for instance, as an example, you say that you love God. Like, let's talk Christian talk. Let's talk spiritual walk talk.
Okay.
Someone says that they love God, but the closest people to them, vis-a-vis their family, experience them as unloving.
Right.
Most of the time.
Right.
And I'm going to say that most of the time, anything above 50% is most of the time, which means if you are unloving in 15 waking hours of every day, 7 days a week, if 8 of those hours, waking hours, where people interact with you is unloving, then most of the time you are unloving. In that unloving state, John says something really, really poignant that's clarifying. He says that you cannot say that you love God but hate your neighbor.
Right.
So there we have an example of the natural before the spiritual. Does that make sense?
Yes.
you cannot say that you're generous with God, generous spiritually, but you are a what would you call it? Tight-walleted. You're ungenerous with your time, or you're
Right.
ungenerous with your words, or
Mhm.
ungenerous with your affection, or ungenerous with your compliments, or
Mhm.
ungenerous with your attention. Um, you cannot say that you're generous if most experience of you is ungenerous. First the natural, then the spiritual. So you cannot say that you love God, but you mistreat your children.
Right.
First the natural, then the spiritual. So
Okay.
show me your faith. Show me the state of
Mhm.
being of your faith before you talk to me about your faith. That doesn't mean that we're not talking about the faith. It doesn't at all relegate not talking about the spiritual issues. What it does is it prioritizes inner transformation before external dialogue. It prioritizes internal behavior. It prioritizes the transformation of the being and what we communicate through our beingness before speaking about what we want to be, if that makes sense. So
Right.
first the natural, then the spiritual. So when we ask what is gaslighting spiritually, we can kind of get a miss from first understanding the dynamics of how gaslighting appears.
Okay.
So let's try to finesse this a little bit. So the first question was gaslighting spiritually, and then what was the second question?
The second question is how can we see, again, this is if somebody was to gaslight another person, how do we acknowledge that it's actually happening real time? What are
Right,
some of the symptoms or the signs?
right, right. So let's give a little backdrop. So what are the symptoms and the signs so that you can see it? And it sounds like this question is coming from the idea of someone feeling that they are gaslighting others or they have gaslighted others. So
Right.
then there's this question of, well, I love God. I know that I love God and I love myself, but there's something going on in me that I'm doing this. So is there a spiritual reality behind it? What is that? And then, how can I see it in myself and how can I stop it? And then the top question of the spiritual part of it seems to be they're wanting to know if there's something spiritually fueling that thing so that they can really get at it and
Right.
get free from this thing. Well, that's
Right.
a really really good. Now I understand. Does I feel like that's where the question's coming from. So for the tribe, for the community, if that resonates with you, then play with us here as I seek to answer this as best as I can. Number one, if you are struggling and you find yourself doing something that is hurtful, let's just start there. If someone finds themselves doing something that's hurtful to other people and they don't want to be that person anymore, the first step is awareness. So as soon as you're aware of something, um, you have now the potentiality of getting free from it. Because first, awareness must happen so that you can observe. It creates an identity shift where you are no longer embroiled in being identified with your emotions or with the thoughts that you're having or with the actions and the behaviors that you've had. You can own them. You could say, yes, I've done those behaviors. It's true. And those things are bad. And that is wrong. And that is unloving. But the awareness allows the person to enter into that admission. They get, for the first time, they see contrast. So when a child is being raised, when we're children and we're being raised, if a parent is a narcissistic person and a narcissistic parent, and there's gaslighting happening in the family dynamic,
Right.
a child only sees their parents as little gods to them. To every child, a parent initially is a god until they grow up and they realize that the parent does not have omniscience. They don't know everything. They're not omnipresent. They don't know everything at all times. So the child begins to understand, oh, when I did this, they didn't know that I did it.
Right.
So
Right.
now they understand they're not omnipresent. Then they begin to understand they're not omnipotent, they're not all powerful, because when the child sees someone exert their will against their parents and their parents bend to that person's will, they're not omnipotent. So then the child begins to experiment in exerting their own will in the presence of the parent to see what the power dynamics are like between these two gods. Does that make sense?
Right.
In essence. So if you were raised in an environment like this, a child, a human being, does not know that that's not love. So they, in their mind, they twist the concepts of parenting and family and being a child and being an adult and marriage together with these behaviors, these antics, these dynamics, and the dynamics get interpreted as love to the detriment of the being. So when they get married or they're dating or they have close friends and they begin to gaslight them or employ narcissistic tactics and tendencies towards their quote unquote loved ones, they don't really know that that's not love. And they don't really know that that's not family. That's why anyone that was raised in a family where they fight, argue, scream, yell, throw things, pounce on the floor, slam doors, whatever it is, if they don't become aware that that's unhealthy and then get free from it, heal and reprogram, when they get married, they're by nature going to do the same thing.
Right.
By nature, no matter how romantic the beginning of the relationship was, like begets like, frequency draws frequency, and they will get together with someone either with a similar background or that will allow that to happen in their space and tolerate it, because whatever we tolerate perpetuates.
Right.
And so what will happen is, until they have awareness of these dynamics and someone reveals it to them, or they hear it online, or they're watching the discovery moment and they're hearing these things, well, until that moment, they're not aware. So they do not have the power for transformation because they don't know that it's bad. So Paul said in Romans 7, St. Paul said, before I had the law, I had not sinned. Hear that. Before I had the law, I had not sinned, because the law illuminates what is bad and what is good. So
Right.
he says, the law being perfect showed me what it was to covet, and showed me what it was to lie or to steal or to bear false witness, showed me it was to lack integrity and what integrity was. So it was a measure and a light. And he said, but then through the law, sin, seizing the opportunity afforded by the law in my consciousness, took the opportunity and slew me. What he's saying is, a lot of times when we first become aware of something that's not good for us, something that hurts us, something that's in us that we do or that we be, because doing comes from being. So some things inside of us, we feel so guilty that we can almost collapse.
Right.
And end up fueling the dynamic more.
Right.
So we now focus, I don't want to be bad. So since we're focused on not being bad, what are we focused on? Being bad.
Right.
So when you're saying, I don't want to do this, what are you thinking about? What you don't want to do. Therefore, you will do the thing that you're thinking about the most. So the law, Paul said in that same chapter in Romans 7, the law is spiritual, but it doesn't make anyone perfect. So becoming aware or conscious has nothing to do with perfection or transformation. And this is what people get to feel relieved at, feeling that it's not them, they're not broken. Wow, I have this awareness, but I can't fix myself, because awareness and consciousness does not fix anything. It just opens the door to know that you have a diagnosis and now you need a healer. So, number one is, anything destructive comes from the nature of sin, the disalignment of the disaligned beingness of a human being, being out of form and function with the original design that God designed us in. So sin means hamartia, is the Greek word hamartia, which means out of alignment with original design, or bent, broken, dysfunctional, out of alignment. So I like to use the example, as you know, of an arrow and an archery. You have a bow and an arrow, and you could be a master archer, but if that arrow is bent, you're not going to hit the target.
Right.
And even if you practice and that one arrow that's bent that one way, and you keep adjusting your shot to learn how it tends to swivel because it's bent, you're still not going to hit the target every time. You just might hit the target once in a while.
Right.
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 So what
Mm.
you're only doing is mastering dysfunction.
This
So
is really a great example.
so this is this. I'm glad you see it that way. This is when, right? This is when people try to, let's say they lack confidence and they know that their body language is just wrecked. Their body language is low self-esteem, lack of confidence. They don't hold themselves well. They don't walk well. They don't stand well. So they watch a little YouTube video and they learn body language mechanics. And when they learn that, they start standing up straight. They start taking a poise and a posture, but they have not transformed the inner self. So then it collapses sooner or later
Right. Right. Mm.
because they have not had an identity shift. So, first, and I'm going to use that as a bridge, first, realize that anything destructive doesn't come from God. I'm going to make this simple. Anything destructive doesn't come from spirit, it comes from sin. And anything that's sinful, that's based on lying, which gaslighting is based on lying, the scripture
Mm.
says that the fallen one, Lucifer or Satan, Hasatan, is the father of all lies. So if he's the father of all lies, then gaslighting is in his domain.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
the spiritual reality of gaslighting. So let me ask you a question. Why do people lie? Why does anyone lie?
They don't want to get caught. They don't want somebody to see that they're bad.
Right. To see that they're bad, right? To so people lie out of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of separation,
Mm.
fear of loss, whether it's, and you can go into all these in the branches, like loss of what? Maybe relational status,
Mm.
loss of how they think the person views them,
Right.
right? So
Right.
there is the sense that within the loss, there could be a loss of a job. It could be a loss of monetary gain. It could be
Mm.
a loss of love. They can perceive that they lose love, lose affection, lose attention, right?
Right. Mm.
But so therefore, within that fear, the lie of separation exists in that fear. And within the lie of separation and the lie of loss of love, there is the lie that they themselves are already separate from God and already separate from everything else. So their
Mm.
frequency, and for those of you that are born again believers and you're Bible people and church and from the churchianity realm and maybe not used to triumph, we use the word frequency because it has nothing to do with pseudo religion. It's just a fact. Everything has a frequency. Everything has a hertz, gigahertz, or hertz frequency signature. And so when someone is resonating, when someone is in love, you can go research this. I don't need to do the work. I've done the work. Their hertz are high. So love is at a hertz of above 800 hertz. When someone is in fear and anxiety, they're below 120 hertz. They're at
Mm.
100 hertz, 90 hertz. So when you're in dismay, when you're in fear and in anxiety, you're resonating under 100 hertz. That's 900 hertz away from love.
Wow.
So you're resonating at 90% loss of who you're truly designed to be and 90% loss of who God is. So in order for you to resonate in fear, anxiety, scarcity, not enoughness, in order that fuels the lie.
I see.
So Jesus the Christ said, the enemy seeks to steal, kill, and destroy, but I
Right.
have come that you may have life and life
Right.
more abundantly.
Yes.
Life resonates above 1,000 hertz that we know of
Mm.
already. I would say that life, because God is life and God is light, it probably resonates above 5,000 hertz. So when God shows up, he's resonating probably in 10,000 hertz, right? So
Amazing. Yes.
pure light, which is uncreated light, God is uncreated light that God is also love. God is love, God is
Mm.
light. So if God is love and God is light, the scripture says that the light of God is the life of men, which then can also be translated, the love that is God, that is light, is our life. So
Hmm.
light resonates at a constant existential rate of recreativity. Lying is a destructive force. Bearing false witness is a destructive force. So
Hmm.
gaslighting is a tactic of lying that has to do with exactly what the Ten Commandments say: you should not bear false witness against your neighbor. The full commission of that commandment, as people know it, because that word commandment is not the Jewish original word phrase. In the Torah, it doesn't say translate from Hebrew to English as the Ten Commandments. We call it that.
Hmm.
It was called the messages, the phrases of God, the
Wow.
ideation of God, the
Yes.
principles of Yahweh. And so that principle that he released of, it doesn't say you shall not lie. It says you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. So
Hmm.
gaslighting is exactly bearing false witness against your neighbor. So which means gaslighting is of the flesh, which is fueled by the liar, the father of lies, from a place of scarcity, unworthiness, not enoughness, fear, doubt, dismay, anxiety,
Hmm.
a sense of loss. And so,
Hmm.
if you even think about it, when a nation is protecting itself, right? When a nation is protecting itself against tyranny and they send out spies, those spies are living a lie,
Right.
okay?
Right.
But
Hmm.
they're living a lie for the protection of not of being discreet, to not share the secrets of the nation with other nations.
Right. Right. That's
So
so good.
the,
That's
the
so good.
front that they're putting is to somewhat disclose and hedge in the privacy of the country, but it's based on fear,
Hmm.
because the country fears that if that intelligence gets out, their enemies would destroy them.
Wow. That's so good. So
So,
good.
so all of this doesn't exist in the kingdom of heaven. It
Hmm.
doesn't exist in the realities of the domain of the children of God. This
Exactly.
is why Paul says, and those of you that once lied, lie no more, tell the truth. If you once were a thief, you're now a servant and a giver. So you're no longer what you were, you're a new creation. So that's the background of the spiritual reality of gaslighting. Where gaslighting comes from is it was a play in the 1930s called Angel. If I misquote me, but you can look it up, Google it. It's called Angel something. And Alfred Hitchcock, the early film writer, um, wrote a movie in the late 1930s, early 40s called the Gaslight.
Hmm.
And in the movie Gaslight, the movie was about a husband that was trying to steal. And remember, these are all Alfred Hitchcock movies. They're black and white, very slow, right? Very slow. People got to remember they created movies that were very slow based on simple premises.
Yes. Yes.
The premise was there was a husband who was trying to steal his wife's jewelry, this like
Hmm.
little fortune that she had somewhere. And every time he would go into the attic, he would be searching for this jewelry, trying to find this jewelry so that he can steal it. But every time he went into the attic, there was this gas light that would dim in the house. And so his wife would say to him, there's this thing going on. I don't know what you're doing, or what are you doing? Well, every time you're doing, the gas light goes down. And he's like, no, you're imagining things. No, that's not, I don't know. You're making stuff up. That's gaslighting.
Hmm.
When you say to someone, when they know it, they have proof, and you tell them, no, that didn't, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. It didn't happen that way. For instance, an easy cookie cutter example is someone is with someone else. We're not going to put labels. Someone's with someone else, and that person is angry they're hyperventilating, their yang is up, they look like they're going to punch something, and they start yelling at that person because they were talking, but they're in a heightened state of emotionality, and in that heightened state, the octaves go up, and they begin to yell at that person. And as they're yelling, the other individual at some point says, "But please don't yell at me." And the person says, "I'm not yelling at you." That's gaslighting. That's a very cookie cutter presentation of gaslighting. Okay. Now, if the person says, "Oh my God, I did raise my voice, I apologize," that has nothing to do with gaslighting. It's completely honest, completely present. It just means they got caught up in their emotions, right? But um, uh, hold on one second. I want to, because I have my own notes. As you know, I'm a coach and a mentor, and I have my own notes. Let me go into my file. I want to give people a quick rundown of some examples. Is that cool?
That'd be
Because
great.
this goes into the second question. How do you see the signs? Number one, moments like this. Number two, do research. Awareness is key. Do research and find out what are signals of gaslighting and how to see them in yourself and how to see them in others. When you become aware, now you can ask God to deliver you. Now you can ask God for freedom, and God might send you to a neuroplastic tactician like me, someone who practices neurogenesis and neuroplasticity work, so that you can actually get free through prayer, but then also free the mind and free the brain and rewrite the programming.
Yes.
So we'll
Okay.
do this real quick, and go ahead. You're going to say something.
Well, no, I was thinking this is great. I think that this is going to be so helpful to many friends and families and communities because this word is really new, right? I had never knew about this word until it was mentioned a couple years ago. So I think this is coming into the forefront and understanding it and also breaking free from it is it's a huge win. So please continue.
Yeah, it's coming to the forefront because people are very interested in healing and getting free from their traumas and their hurts. And I hope that people realize. I believe that people will realize that it's important to heal the soul, but there's a difference between catharsis, therapy, and liberation.
Right. Right.
Liberation is becoming a brand new being, and liberation means there's no longer the presence of the old. And
Right.
so I want to say to people, it is possible for you to get liberated by your creator, because when your car has an issue, if you know someone that owns a Lamborghini, they don't go to a mom and pop shop to fix the Lamborghini or to maintenance it. They go to the manufacturer to maintenance their
Yeah.
Lamborghini, if you
Yes.
know what I'm saying. So
Yes.
if you are the most one of the most superb created beings, created to reflect and bear the image of God, then you need to also go to God and trust God to transform and heal you. So let's go into some. I have a lot. I have 56 exciting things written down, but I'm going to share 10. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So one gaslighting sign in a relationship. So this is in the context of within exchanges with people in a consistent basis, is lying about or denying something and refusing to admit the lie even when you show them proof. So just like I said, the person's yelling, the person says, "Please don't yell at me," and they say, "I'm not yelling." They're in the moment, there's proof. Now that is cookie cutter in the moment. There are a lot of people that have experienced that. Um, Another is uh, uh, let's use a little more sensitive example. Um, the man is looking at the woman, uh, flirting with another guy. He's watching it. He's seeing it. He's standing. He went to the bathroom. He's coming back. She doesn't know that he's there yet. He's watching them. He watches her put her phone number in somebody else's phone,
Hmm.
and or touching, because he knows the woman, he knows his wife, and they're touching each other, and they don't know each other. Oh, how you doing? The body language, everything, the pitch of the voice, they're flirting. He comes upon the scene. She changes her state.
Hmm.
What's going on here? She says nothing. That's gaslighting. If then he says to her, you were flirting with him the whole time. Were you flirting with him? I need to talk with you about this. I need to talk with you about this because I feel a certain way. I feel hurt about this. You were
Mm.
flirting with that gentleman. And she goes, no, I wasn't. Were you talking at this pitch? Were you leaning into his body? Were you touching his shoulder? Did you touch his forearm? Did you turn your feet towards him? Are all these gestures or flirtation? And she goes, yeah, those are gestures of flirtation. He goes, were you doing them? Yes. You were flirting. No, I wasn't.
Mm.
That's gaslighting. Okay. Number two, insisting that an event or behavior you witnessed never happened and that the person is remembering it wrong.
Right.
Okay. So this is where someone did something, they feel bad about it, and the person is calling them to account to it. And then when they bring it back up, the person says, no, 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 that didn't happen. But before there was consensus that it did happen. And now they're saying it didn't happen. And now as time, professional, or it's horrible to say professional, but people that are akin to gaslighting, they will even use time to rewrite a memory. So an
Mm.
occurrence. So every time they bring up that subject over months, they'll change it little by little. And that is a form of gaslighting, because gaslighting is a form of bearing false witness, but it's a manipulation tactic. Okay. Number three, spreading rumors and gossip about you, or telling you that the other people are gossiping about you.
Mm.
Why would someone do that? Well, they might not like you having too many friends. So they'll say that someone said something about you so that you won't hang out with them anymore. They're gaslighting you. So notice bearing false witness. They're bearing false witness about what someone did, that no one did anything. And then they're telling you about it to produce distance between you and these people. Another
Mm.
form of gaslighting is, and this is in what I call inverted gaslighting. This is when an individual wants to manipulate, let's say, the sympathies of their spouse. And this is so sad that this happens, but we need to inform the people so that they know that this is true. And they want their spouse to feel jealous.
Mm.
And so they'll say, oh, this woman was flirting with, if it was a guy, this woman was flirting with me today. And I had to keep pushing her off of me and stuff. And and then they'll put themselves in relationship with that individual just to make that person jealous when that person never flirted with them.
Mm.
I call that inverted gaslighting, because they're trying to produce a response in the other person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that
Okay.
makes sense.
So this kind of goes into the spreading rumors or gossip about you. So this would be a narcissists do this. It's called triangulation. So let's say your boss has an issue with you, but they haven't confronted you about it in a healthy way, in a
Mm.
supportive way. So
Right.
they go talk to a different employee about you, and then they create gossip or an issue, and they say, maybe if you think about it, go talk to them about it. That's triangulation with gaslighting. Okay.
Mm.
Number four, uh, changing the subject or refusing to listen when confronted about a lie or other gaslighting behavior. Did you just manipulate me? Oh, wait, what are you saying? When you just said that just now, an hour ago, you said this. And now in this scenario, now an hour later, you said you changed it and you're saying this. Did you just lie to me? Did you just change the story? And then they change the subject. Oh, what are we doing tonight? By the way, oh yeah, no, wait, I'll talk to you about that in a minute. We could talk about that, but by the way, this is they'll change the subject. Or if their tactic is defensive, they'll say, "What about you? What about
Mm.
what you did? I'm doing this because of what you did," and that's another form of gaslighting. Number five, telling you that you overreact when you call them out. Why are you making a big issue about this? You're calling them out on the gaslighting or the lying or the manipulation or something that they were irresponsible about, or inappropriate behavior or inappropriate gesture, and you're calling them out, and they reduce your value, and they say, why are you making this a big deal? You're always overreacting. You see, you're a bad person. You're always
Mm.
overreacting.
Got it.
Now, I'm going to insert something here. Someone who is addicted in their nature, they have a narcissistic behavior beingness, because people get to know narcissism is narcissism is a true clinical narcissism is a personality type. It's not just a behavior. Now, you can have narcissistic tendencies and behaviors, but you could not be a clinical narcissist, because, for one instance, you could have 5 narcissistic tendencies that come up once in a while and consistently in certain scenarios, but a narcissist, a true narcissist, will never wonder if it was their fault. They will never say, "What did I do wrong?"
Mm.
Unless they see a reward in it, and then they'll gaslight their way out of it later on.
Wow. Okay.
So telling you that you're overreacting. So what I was going to insert was that if the person is a narcissist, okay, telling you that you're overreacting when you call them out, they will hear what I'm saying and they will say, "Yeah, people do that to me all the time." But
Mm.
they will not be thinking, "Where do I do that?"
Mm.
They'll just say, "Oh, people do that to me all the time." So they push off any eyes on their issues. They don't like eyes on their issues, and gaslighters do not like eyes on their issues, because why do we lie? For fear,
Right.
loss of reputation, loss of how we're seen, loss of monetary income, loss of whatever, etc., etc. Does that make sense?
That
So you
makes
want to be mindful that someone who's akin and addicted within the realm of the psychological matrix and makeup of gaslighting will hear what I'm saying and try to, in their mind, they're gaslighting me back while I'm teaching this.
Mm.
They're saying, "Yeah, but that happens. People do that to me all the time." But they're never thinking whatsoever what they do to others. They don't see others first. I mean, they don't see themselves to others first. They see others to themselves. They see themselves as the victim always.
Mm.
So, number 6, blame shifting in relationships. Saying that if you acted, for instance, if you acted different, they wouldn't treat you like this. So it's really your fault.
Mm.
So if I'm yelling at you and a spouse punches another spouse or slaps them or something like that or whatever, and they say, "Well, I'm just like this way because you are the way you are.
Mm.
You made me like this."
Mm.
That's a form of gaslighting. There's
Mm.
no self-ownership. Let's say they do get angry. Let's say they do something they regret doing, but they say, "There was no excuse. No matter what you did, I want to be better. I don't want this to happen in my life. I don't want to be this way."
Right.
That's not gaslighting. You see? Okay. Number 7, trying to smooth things over with loving words that don't match their actions.
Mm.
So they get confronted, and the form of gaslighting is to become this beautiful little puppy and to smooth things over with niceties and nice words and lots of apologies. A lot of people are calling this today love bombing. Lots of
Mm.
love bombing, lots of apology bombing. Narcissists do this as well. When they think they're going to lose the relationship or someone's going to leave them, they'll love bomb them and they'll apologize to the end of day until you get them to believe them. Then when they get you to believe them, they'll gaslight you, turn the tables. Now it's your fault, and they'll shift the balances and the power dynamics, what they think of the power dynamics again.
Mm. Wow.
So they'll try to smooth things over, gaslighting, trying to smooth things over with loving words that don't match their actions. And
Mm.
they'll do it perpetually. They're always smoothing it over. "You know I love you." No, you say it, but at some point it's going to have to rubber meets the road and say, "I know you say it, and I know that you believe probably that you love me, but your actions are not loving." So they
What
need to
a,
be. They
that's
need
an
to be
important distinction. Yeah.
exactly. And if you hold someone that's gaslighting you, for instance, to account, and they're smoothing over, they're trying to smooth over with nice words, and you say what I just said, "Yes, I believe that you may believe that you love me. I cannot change what you think you believe. I believe that you believe that. I believe even that you may want that to be true, but your actions are unloving. Therefore, you are not being loving towards me. If they then gaslight you back, then you know they're truly, truly in a disarray. They need healing. They need being set free, and they need some shepherding, some clinical counseling, some positive psychology, some neuroplasticity work. They need the support of inner healing the child, so that the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism that turned on in them at some point in the youth and created this paradigm, and wherever they learn this behavior, can then be released. So no one's going to release completely a gaslighting mechanism unless their fight, flight, or freeze response in them gets turned off and they start living from a creator state, co-creator
Right.
state. They start living in cohesion with the Holy Spirit,
Mm.
cohesion with God, believing that they're in peace, believing that they're in shalom, believing that El Shaddai is with them, believing that it doesn't matter, that even when they're losing control, they will not go to gaslighting, because they'll trust God. Does that make
Beautiful.
sense? The
Yes.
whole picture of, let's say, like Daniel, Mishael, Hananiah, Azariah, or as people know them, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, being thrown into the fire for not bowing down to the statue of the Babylonian emperor that he erected as a god of himself. They caused people to worship. You go to North Korea today, and at a certain hour of every day, people have to go to the nearest statue of the leader of their country, to pay homage. This is the same thing that Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were confronting, and they said no, and they were thrown into a fiery furnace. They wouldn't, and they said this: even if God doesn't save us from the fire, we will not bow. That is complete confidence in that there is no fear of man. There's only fear and love of God. There's reverence in all of God, and reverence for self. I will not acquiesce my sovereignty and my authority as a child of God to bow down to worship a man. I will only worship God, let alone a statue made by man's hands, an inanimate object. I
Mm.
will not do that, because I love myself. So someone who used to gaslight will transform into the space where they now realize, I will trust God. If they love me, they'll love me, but God loves me. I will not manipulate, because I'll trust that God will reward me and take care of me.
Right.
They move out of survival into co-creator. Does that make sense?
Beautiful. Yes.
Number 8, twisting a story to minimize their abusive behavior.
Mm.
Twisting a story to minimize the abusive behavior that they've levied on their victim. So you can see this in siblings. You can see this in parent to child dynamics. You can see this in spouses. They will minimize the abuse and not relegate and understand the impact that they have had on the other soul. And they'll keep minimizing it because they don't want to break down. They don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to cry. They don't want to lose face.
Mm.
So they'll minimize it, and they'll twist the story. So they'll know it's one thing. So it's already known that they did one thing. Let's say they disrespected their spouse,
Right.
and they have recognized that they disrespected their spouse. But
Mm.
the spouse is very, very hurt. The other spouse is very, very hurt. And they're talking about it. But as they talk about it to the gaslighter, they're seeing to them how bad they are, per se, how bad this moment is, and they can't handle it. So they'll start to minimize, to soothe it, so that they don't lose face and they don't feel like their whole world has collapsed,
Right.
because their identity is in the mask that they wear and the
Mm.
mask that they want people to see them as. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And and again, masquerading.
Mm.
Satan masquerades as an angel of light. So he does this to the whole world. He minimizes the abuse of this world system. Oh, you
Mm.
see, I give you
Wow.
reward. Oh, you see, now I give you social media and people follow you and press hearts, and but you don't, now you don't have people coming to your house anymore like people used to, and the ionosphere of hugging each other and coming into the same consciousness and eating together and breaking bread, and crying together and rejoicing together. No, no, no. This is all, but he doesn't apologize. He just minimizes it. No, no, no. There's more issues breeding, but I'll give you more band-aids for it. Just keep doing what you're doing,
Mm.
right?
Right. Mm.
Minimizing their hurtful behaviors or words by saying something like, it was just a joke, or
Mm.
you're way too sensitive.
Mm.
And so maybe a sister is talking to another sister and she makes a jabbing, sarcastic joke at the expense of her sister. And the sister says, why did you say that like that? And the sister's like, well, wait, but why are you taking this so seriously? No, why'd you say that? You could feel the energy that that was wrong what she did. But she goes, no, no, no. Oh, you're just so sensitive. I can't even play with you. No, it's
Mm.
okay. It's just that you're so sensitive. No, it's that you said this and this is wrong. And this
Mm.
is disrespectful. How can you say that to me? And you do it all the time. You do it on a regular basis. Oh, you know what? I guess you're just so sensitive. I know that I was just playing. I just won't play with you. And they'll highlight the word you. I just won't
Mm.
play with you that way, which is another jig. It's a subterfuge to say I can play with others, but I can't play with you, which then is a subterfuge to make you feel rejected and isolated away, that everyone else is normal and you're not.
Wow.
So they'll
Wow.
say, you're way too sensitive. It was just a joke. But they won't, a healthy person will say, maybe they slipped, or maybe something that the way their mother used to act or their father used to act, there was a moment where it just came out of their personality, and their friend or their sister says, did you just wait, hold on. Did you just say that to me? Did you just joke like that? That's not funny. Oh my God, what did I? And they become aware and go, no, you said this like this. Did you realize what that means? So a true friend will say, do you realize what that means? They'll ask first, qualify
Mm.
the question. Do you realize what you're doing? And they go, and they say, well, when you say that like this and like this, that hurts. That was wrong. And I feel disrespected. And the person goes, oh my God, so when that happens, oh my God, my husband's right. I've been doing that and he was right. So it's the same for you. Yes, it's the same for everyone. And the person goes, oh my God, I need help. I do this often. I didn't realize that that hurts. I was
Mm.
treated like that by my dad.
Mm.
Dad forced them to accept that behavior. So now they think that's loving.
Mm.
Like, I will not allow any man per se, I'm not against it, but that's new in my life, to put their hand on my shoulder and call me buddy. If they do it, I'll move ever so powerfully. I'll shift my energy and I'll say, listen, we don't know each other that well. Let's keep the buddies away out of this context. Let's keep the buddies out of this. Okay?
Right.
Because that's a way that some men were demeaned by their fathers or uncles or their big brothers or a gang, and they were manipulated that way. And so
Right.
I don't allow those mechanics in my space. And so I don't deal very well, or I shift the energies when men would use that type of tactic, or they're
Mm.
used to calling other men buddy in a new relationship, especially if they're older. And if they're younger and they do it, it's definitely passed down mechanisms of unhealthy behavioral mechanics
Right. Right.
and false masculinity. It's a
Mm.
cover up, it's a mask.
Right.
Because
Right.
you don't need to call anyone buddy you don't know and you don't have intimacy with.
Mm.
So within, there's always, I'm just looking at my list here and see if there's anything else. Well, there's so much, but the effect that gaslighting produces is it destabilizes the person's sense of reality, so that they become disoriented in the relationship and proximity to the gaslighter, so that the gaslighter is in control of the narrative. They want
Right.
to control the narrative. So the spiritual reality of that is this bearing false witness, a spirit or an energy of bearing false witness, a spirit of lies that seeks to perpetuate the lie of separation, the lie of not enoughness, the fear of lack, the fear of loss, the fear of separation, the fear of not belonging, and a people pleasing spirit
Mm.
in a mechanism of survival. In that mechanism of survival, God can set you free from that. So, first, you want to expose yourself to what are these gaslighting tactics? What do they
Mm.
tend to look like? Make sure you're reading it from professionals, from
Mm.
neuroplasticity psychologists, from clinicians, from therapists, from family therapists, from couples therapists.
Right.
Read it from there first, and then you could sublimate that with, let's say, people that are coaches that are making videos from their own experience. They went through the journey, they got free from gaslighting, got free from gaslighters, got free from narcissistic relationships, and they've been free for years and they have these great healthy relationships. And now maybe they've made some YouTube videos describing the journey, describing what certain women behave like when they're gaslighting, what certain men behave like when they're gaslighting, and how to, and now you feel your awareness, and now you want to do this. Ask God to set you free. Believe that God has set you free. Receive the freedom that He has to give you, but there must be an identity shift. So then make a list of all the things that you did, what your mechanisms were in the past, all the gaslighting tactics that you have actually employed, and the ones that you're tempted to employ.
Mm.
Then next to it, write down what scenarios tend to trigger, when does it usually happen? So you're writing the old script down. Now in a new page, you're going to write down you're going to write the scenarios on the left, and on the right, you're going to write what your new responses and state of being is going to be, even if that is just saying, I'm feeling a bit vulnerable. I don't know what to say. I'm feeling a little unsafe. It's not you. Because someone saying that they feel unsafe could also be a form of gaslighting. Sometimes people are being confronted in a healthy way, and they'll say, I just feel unsafe. I just feel unsafe. That's them gaslighting the person that's lovingly supporting and trying to help them by sharing the truth with them in a loving way and in a respectful and healthy way, to try to make them seem like they're the hostile one, and then now they're the victim because they're being exposed or confronted. So you have to be careful with these pseudo psychology things that have come up in the pseudo personality development psychology realm, and people saying, well, I'm not safe. Well, sometimes in order for you to transform, the old program will feel unsafe. The old mechanisms of you will feel unsafe. When you're next to a massively healthy person and you are still toxic, you will feel unsafe around them. When you are around a prophet, let's say, or a prophetess, sometimes you'll feel like they see through you. So you feel a little unsafe. But then the mechanism is, well, God sees through me. God sees all of me, yet I'm safe, right? This is why sometimes people, when they're maybe living a way that they know is not ideal, not right, or not righteous, they won't pray, because they don't want to be in God's presence where they have to be confronted, which
Right.
means they need love will lovingly confront them, and which means that then they get to lovingly confront themselves.
Right.
So these are things that I hope helps people. This is a simple practice of identity shifting. And then now every day when you're in prayer, don't make it all about that, but see yourself operating from this new place and get ahead of the curve. If something's happening, and if you're in a relationship and you've discovered that you have been gaslighting a lot, once you deal with yourself and get a good grip of that with God and with yourself, speak with your spouse about it. Apologize, bring it to the forefront, confess it. Every time I did it, be specific. This is what, because the gaslighting mechanism doesn't like to be specific.
Right.
People that are traumatized and they have these mechanisms, they don't like specific, they like general. Well, you know why I'm sorry. And they might start really well, darling. They've got tears in the eyes. I just want to say, I'm really, really sorry for what you experienced and what I did, kind of did, didn't mean to do. You see, the mechanism's trying to make light still, trying to minimize still, maybe trying to twist still, maybe still trying to change what happened still. So they don't want to admit it. So commit to admit it. That is a major step. Commit to say it in detail. When I said it like this, when I said it this way, I manipulated you. I distorted that. It's not intent. I want to be a good person. I'm coming to realize that I've done these things. It's inside of me. Forgive me. When I manipulated your thoughts, when I flirted with that guy based on what I said before, right? When I had that lustful thing for that man or for that woman, when I was talking in DMs, you know what I mean, and you found it, but I said no, I wasn't doing that. It's not true. Forgive me. You want to address. They need to confess in detail, because narcissist tendencies and gaslighting tendencies, by nature, the tendency, the program does not want to confront in detail. So
Mm.
confess and apologize in detail, and get ready to feel vulnerable, because get ready for the silence. Someone does not need to respond to you immediately. So you must be comfortable in the time of the silence while your spouse is processing it. Because one of the things that gaslighting tendencies and narcissistic tendencies don't like is silence. Or what are
Mm.
you thinking? What are you thinking? Come on, tell me something, tell me something, tell me something, tell me something. And it's aggressive because it wants to control the narrative. But if you're willing to wait, you just sit there and say, I know you may need time. Do you want to keep talking about this? Thank you for listening to me. Um, thank you. And again, I apologize. And now the other mechanism they have to deal with in that moment, the love bombing, the over apologizing, the smoothing things over with words. So when they feel that prompting, if they wrote down their identity shifting lists, they'll be aware. They can have even a little notebook next to them while they're having the discussion, just to make sure when something comes up, they go, oh, that's that trying to minimize mechanism. And they go, okay, and they can say to their spouse, if I'm silent, I'm just processing myself to make sure I don't do this list. By the way, here's the list that I came up with. Would you like to add to it?
Mm. That's powerful.
It's very vulnerable. If you have been gaslighting your spouse or your loved one, and you've made a list to get free, and you're doing the identity shifting practice, give them the list and say, are you aware of any other moments of certain gaslighting tactics? Maybe the spouse says, well, I'm not as astute. You've probably been reading about it. So why don't we read the what's already been discovered and go watch some videos and see,
Wow.
and go, that right there, and be loving about it. Say, you see that right there. Pause, or stop reading. Pause. Turn each other into a dyad. Face each other, sitting on the floor, not standing up so no one gets angry, right?
Yeah.
Sitting on the floor or sitting on the bed facing each other, and say, you see, you do that thing. And let me remind you, be specific. Never tell someone they do something and you can't tell them when they did it and how they did it. Be specific. You gaslight it like that. Remember, like 3 months ago, we were in the car and we were coming from this place after that event, or we were whatever it was. Detail and say that. Do you remember? Yes, I remember. Now, if you are the one that's admitting, you have to admit, yes, I do remember. If bring it up and remember it, and then don't change it. Say,
Mm.
okay, I see your point. I see your point. And then if you're someone that's been gaslighting, own the transformation. You can ask your spouse for help where they're willing to help, but you must own that you're going to be helping yourself. The burden of transformation is upon you, not upon them.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
God can set you free. Do the identity shifting and ask God to set you free. God can transform anyone. You're a new creature in Christ. And so remember, in Christ, everything that's happening is under the blood, right, Isabel?
Yes.
Everything is under the blood. That doesn't excuse us to continue doing horrible things or hurtful
Absolutely.
things. But
Absolutely.
there is so much grace, there is so much compassion, but you need to allow faith to do a sure work inside of you where you know that you are a new creature in Christ and there's no condemnation for those that are in Christ Jesus. For behold, the old has passed away. Behold, all things have been made new. That's good,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. This is so good. Thank you so much for sharing such a detailed regarding the appearance of gaslighting and what it looks like, as well as it being such a loving space for those who have experienced it and those who are the ones who find themselves in that confrontation and that contrast. Oh, wow, I actually did that. So I think that family, if you are seeing this for the first time, I want to say we are a spiritual community all over the world. We're here to grow with one another. We're here to see that each other grow the likeness of Christ. This is our ethos in Triumph. If this has blessed you, we would love to hear from you. And if you're healing from this, if you're healing from gaslighting or narcissism, or you find yourself with these tendencies and also are healing, and you're looking to get help, and you're trying this identity shift and it's working for you, we would love to hear from you. And with that, good night, family, and God bless.
Take care.